The Heisei era of the Godzilla franchise produced 7 films during its 11-year run, beginning with Return of Godzilla and ending with Godzilla Vs Destoroyah. Before settling on a script, Godzilla 7 would evolve through 14 different storylines. A few are nothing more than a title, some have a general plot, while others, like this one, are a bit more fleshed out. With that said, there are some amazing untapped potential stories here. Last time we took a look at Godzilla vs Ghost Godzilla, and today we'll take a look at Kazumi Omuri's expansion on that draft with the Unmade Godzilla vs Ghost Godzilla Story Plan A. Godzilla vs Ghost Godzilla Story Plan A comes to us from the Godzilla vs Destoroyah Perfection book, and I have to thank Toho Kingdom and Noah Oskow for the translation. They've done an amazing job translating some important works from Japan, giving us insight into these unused projects. While here, we'll also take a look at the Unmade Godzilla vs Baraguirus, as it's basically a modification of this very draft. Our story begins with a busy day at the Ariake Subcenter. Workers are building a new submarine tunnel when something strange is discovered. It's a skeleton, a big one, and when it's examined by Kazuhito Kashima, a university professor, he wonders what it could be, thinking to himself that this can't be a mammoth or a dinosaur. To further inspect the bones, they're loaded up and sent off to the National Institute of Bioscience in Tokyo. Now, Kashima's wife had died earlier in an accident, and he's left with his son, Sumito, a 12-year-old in the 6th grade. Upon arrival to the National Institute of Bioscience, Kashima takes a piece of the bone and gives it to his son, telling him that it's a dinosaur bone key holder. Later, that same evening in Tokyo, people begin to report large-scale paranormal events. It begins with footsteps that echo through the streets without leaving form or footprint. Shortly after is a shockwave both heard and felt, followed up by buildings that are damaged by an unknown attacker. The self-defense force is alerted and is working with the local police force to protect the area, but the attacks continue. When the JSDF finally encounters the translucent entity while it's doing damage, they attack it with heavy weaponry, but it only enrages the spirit to cause even more destruction. To make matters worse, the local news media sees a pattern and likeness in the damage done, a pattern that reminds him of an unseen or ghost Godzilla. When the news finally reaches Kashima, he wonders, could this be Godzilla? If so, are the bones found earlier those of the monster that attacked back in 1954, the one killed by the oxygen destroyer? Nights would pass and a third attack happens, causing Kashima to map out the events. To his surprise, they form a triangle with the National Institute of Bioscience at its center. Is the ghost looking for its bones? It must be. He consults a psychic researcher at his university, and they don't deny the theory, but they do wonder if an invisible mass can be destroyed. As a precaution, the bones are then moved to an uninhabited island off the Miura Peninsula. The tactic works, and the attacks stop. However, Sumito still has that fragment of the bone, and looking to help prove his father's theory correct, he decides to see if he can use it to lure the ghost of Godzilla to a trade fair where he and his buddies can rip off some video games in all of the chaos. Much to his surprise, it works, and the Makuhari trade fair is attacked by the ghost. However, Kashima knows that his son used the fragment to summon the ghost, and even though he's happy that his idea is further proved, he scolds his son for the prank and takes the key holder for safekeeping at the university. The holder's not safe here either though, as it's soon stolen by an unknown thief. Later at night, a giant silhouette of light would rise from the depths of the waters off of the Miura Peninsula, the location of the bones. The light is described as being similar to the curtains of light that you see in an aurora, yet it's in the shape of Godzilla floating on the sea, an Aurora Godzilla. Strangely enough, this Aurora Godzilla would show up nightly on the water where it would remain still, only fading away by morning. A transport ship and crew, either crazy or curious, would go into this Aurora, only to disappear into a beam of light. The same thing would happen later to a group of kids, but with the Aurora staying immobile, they decide that it poses no further danger. As news of this spectacle spreads, it begins to attract even more attention. TV, radio, and print media all become fascinated with the Aurora Godzilla. Acting on a plan to get rid of it, Yuriko Mew, a director at Station XX, would hatch a plan to end this monster. She suggests that little Godzilla should be used to fight with this new Godzilla or perhaps drive it off. Returning from past films is Miki Segusa, friend of Little G, and she is vehemently opposed to risking Little G's life for a TV show. But this is the Godzilla universe, and Yuriko has already begun to push her plan forward. Little Godzilla is then taken from his new home on Birth Island, and once near the peninsula, he's released. As the TV cameras roll, we see little by little that the form of the Aurora Godzilla is changing, and it appears that something is changing Little G as well, as his eyes and mouth are said to slowly take on a ferocious look. Suddenly, the light from the Aurora pours outward like a mist, reaching for little Godzilla. He watches in horror as it enters his body. He then takes the form of a mass of lava, which in turn takes the form of the 1954 Godzilla. The nightmare of 40 years earlier has returned. The Ghost Godzilla, now with a physical body, moves through Tokyo engulfed in flame, destroying the great city's dome and tower. Only with Tokyo's people in absolute despair does the ghost finally head back to the ocean. But this act did not go unnoticed. The current Godzilla, the Heisei adult, is now on the move with Tokyo as his destination. In a bizarre twist, we learn that the bone keyholder that was taken from the university was done so by none other than Hideki Ogata. And if that name sounds familiar, Hideto Ogata was the one responsible for helping convince Dr. Serizawa to use the oxygen destroyer on Godzilla back in 1954, and Hideki is the son of Hideto and Emiko Yamane. As it turns out, Hideki looked into the oxygen destroyer, but Dr. Serizawa took any information on it to his grave. However, Hideki now believes that he can learn of the oxygen destroyer by analyzing the bone from the keyholder. Using state-of-the-art mid-90s computers, he's able to learn of the unbelievable power held by oxygen. The power to change atomic energy from nuclear fission caused by uranium into temporal energy. This energy is so powerful that a single second of it is worth 10,000 years to us. Meaning, things exposed to it jump 10,000 years into the future. When this happened to the 1954 Godzilla, his body was destroyed, but his life force remained, and this life force eventually became the invisible mass of Ghost Godzilla. In his studies on the bone, Hideki is now working on a more powerful version of the oxygen destroyer. Called the Neo-Oxygen Destroyer, it's able to kill off any life force left behind by the original, including the life force of Ghost Godzilla. However, exposure to the Neo-Oxygen Destroyer is now taking its toll, and Hideki's life will soon end because of it. The Heisei Godzilla arrives at the Tsukishima waterfront, and soon after, so does Ghost Godzilla by lifting up the Kachidoki Bridge, and the battle of Godzilla and Ghost Godzilla begins. Though said to be a whole size smaller, Ghost puts up one heck of a fight. Heisei G is agile, but the Ghost is quicker, using buildings for cover and disappearing beneath the water surface when needed. But this only delays the inevitable. The Heisei Godzilla eventually lands enough blows to cause Ghost Godzilla to collapse. The life force from the 1954 Godzilla slowly releases its grip and begins to float skyward as the ghostly form reverts back into a lifeless little Godzilla. In freeing Little G, it looks like it killed him, and Godzilla lets out a tragic roar. And with a heavy gait, he slowly heads back to the ocean. But little Godzilla may not be lost for good. Mickey believes that when the ghost energy left Little G, he entered into a state of suspended animation, and that he can be revived by starting nuclear fission within his body. In preparation, she manages to get his body shipped to the docks of Yokohama and has him put into quarantine. But even she wonders if she's doing the right thing here. She knows that bringing any kaiju to life can cause massive pain and suffering for mankind. And she doesn't think that little Godzilla totally understands the difference between good and evil yet. To make matters worse, how is she going to get the plutonium needed for the fission process? Meanwhile, Hideki has completed his work on the Neo-Oxygen Destroyer, only to die shortly after finishing it. Now originally we mentioned that the Neo-Oxygen Destroyer was built to kill Ghost Godzilla, but now, with no reason given in the draft, the JSDF plans to use it instead on the Heisei adult. Now out at sea, they approach Godzilla on a submarine armed with the weapon. It's fired off, and the Heisei Godzilla is destroyed in a flurry of bubbles. We then learn that somehow, Miki has attained the plutonium that she needs to be able to revive little Godzilla. It's injected into him, and she waits, wondering if she's done the right thing. Back at the Miura Peninsula, without warning, the gigantic abandoned bones stored on the island explode into pieces, scattering into glittering dust. The life force of Ghost Godzilla returns, descending from the sky, as it enters a new stage. A semi-translucent shape of the 54 Godzilla appears and floats upwards. What takes form is a Godzilla like the most beautiful of carved glass sculptures, described as the most beautiful Godzilla in history. This is the birth of Crystal Godzilla, and with its body shining, it slowly makes its way towards Tokyo. Nearing land, Crystal Godzilla attacks. Its heat rays set the sea afire and burn up dock tankers. In response, Miki, with a crew, have dropped off little Godzilla and have now run for cover, but the nuclear fission has not yet begun, and he lays motionless and helpless. Still offshore, Crystal Godzilla continues its relentless attack. Its heat ray blasts are now hitting the docks near Little G, and luckily, the fusion process begins as his eyes slowly open. Eyes now closer to Godzilla's. He's been reborn. Though not yet at Godzilla full size, he's now closer to him in nature. For reference, they don't call him Godzilla Jr. in the story. The name must come later, but the evolution is here nonetheless. Now well onto land, Crystal Godzilla, with its beautiful body and its contrasting violence, moves forward with its destruction, obliterating the International Exhibition Center and the Ariake Coliseum. That is, until little Godzilla appears and begins hunting him down. They meet and the final battle begins. A battle described by Omuri as that of the shining light of the old generation and the unknown, still secretive newer generation. The two battle ferociously, exchanging heat rays and trading blows from Ariake to Tenezu Isle. And there, the fight ends, when Crystal Godzilla falls, shattering like glass. It's over, and little Godzilla, now changed and without a father figure, returns to the Pacific Ocean, and Miki can only watch as he disappears over the horizon. Will this Godzilla be an ally or enemy of mankind? She can only pray that she won't regret bringing him back to life. And that, guys, is one of the more fleshed out ideas of all of the unused Godzilla 7 drafts. It's one of the few to go deep enough to actually have some character creation and development. Having Hideki as the child of Hideto and Emiko from the 1954 film is a nice way to tie the era back to its beginning on a human level, while the Ghost of Godzilla ties things up on a kaiju level. I also thought that the reverse engineering on the bones of Godzilla to recreate the Oxygen Destroyer was a pretty good way to unearth its secrets. What I don't get is how the Neo-Oxygen Destroyer was made specifically to kill Ghost Godzilla, and then for no reason, they use it on the current Heisei Godzilla instead. I also thought that Miki should have trusted little Godzilla a bit more, but I do understand her wondering if he'd grow out of this connection with us. I have to admit that I love the further stages of Ghost Godzilla here. Aurora and the Crystal Godzilla would no doubt look amazing on screen. They were both beautiful and unique in design, coming off like glass sculptures of museum quality, a fitting homage to the Big G. Unfortunately, the special effects needed to pull off these ghostly forms was in its early stages back then, and Koichi Kawakita lacked the faith that it could be done so convincingly. I also got major Godzilla vs Kong vibes from a few scenes in this draft, like when little Godzilla is transported on the boat just like Kong was, and how when Little G died, they used fission to bring him back, kinda like how Kong was brought back with the heave so that they could be used to take down greater threats. On top of that, the final fight with Kong and Legendary's Godzilla was similar to the fight between Ghost Godzilla and the Heisei, where the opponent used agility to survive until Godzilla eventually catches up and ends the match. Though this draft does not include them, perhaps for a story plan B, Shinji Nishikawa in his book Shinji Nishikawa Drawing Book of Godzilla said that he felt that more kaiju were needed to spice up what he saw as a bunch of different Godzilla incarnations. Looking for a way to add Anguirus, the plan was to have Ghost Godzilla fuse with Anguirus as revealed at the 2017 Godzilla Showspace exhibition. Here, concept artwork for Shinji Nishikawa's Heisei version of Anguirus was shown along with commentary describing how the combination of Ghost Godzilla and Anguirus would have birthed a new monster. In another evolution, in Koichi Kawakida's book, Heisei Godzilla Chronicle, Anguirus and a subspecies, the Anguirus Hound, was also connected to this draft. All of this Anguirus talk would lead to another draft by Shinji and Shogo Tomiyama called Godzilla Vs Baraguirus. Here, the ghost of the 54 Godzilla would return 40 years later as usual. It then rampages Japan, but in doing so has drawn the ire of both Godzilla and Baraguirus, who replaces Little Godzilla from before. Baraguirus has no concept images, and according to Shinji Nishikawa, resembles a cross between Baragon and Anguirus, yet it's not a literal fusion of the two. This Baraguirus would then be possessed by the Ghost Godzilla, who then in turn fights Godzilla. So what are your thoughts on the story plan A of Ghost Godzilla? To me, the later edition of Anguirus was just a bit too much, and the Vs Baraguirus draft was kinda going down in quality from story plan A. How do you like the story when stacked up against Shogo Tomiyama's original draft that I covered here before? I have to admit, I love the stages of the ghost here in this story. The Crystal and Aurora Godzilla forms are awesome, but Ghost Godzilla from the first draft had a crazy power set with all sorts of abilities. Now this isn't the last of the Ghost Godzilla Unmade ideas, and we'd even see Ghost Godzilla make it to the big screen in the form of Godzilla in GMK, Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack, and with Kiryu or Mechagodzilla, both of the Millennium Era. I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions down below. And as always guys, your likes, shares, comments, and subscriptions go a long way towards helping the channel grow. Take care, and I hope to see you next time.